Welcome to The Snap with Alexis Perry and Sydney Jones.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Broncos Podcast Network for another edition of The Snap. I'm Sydney Jones, joined as always by my co-host Alexis Perry, and it's another post-win Wednesday here on The Snap, our favorite kind of Wednesday, and we have a super fun show planned for you guys today. Alexis and I will be joined very shortly by the New Orleans Saints team reporter Caroline Gonzalez to help us preview the Broncos' Week 12 matchup against the Saints and chat a little bit about her career. But first, our quick snap of the day. Alexis, the Broncos got a big win over the Miami Dolphins at home on Sunday, a win they certainly needed, and it seemed like night and day on Sunday from the Broncos' prior performance against the Raiders. They kind of look like a different team, if I'm going to be honest here. What impressed you the most about the Broncos this Sunday?
I mean, honestly, this was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation from what we saw the week before in Vegas to what they did last week against the Dolphins. I mean, seriously, the Broncos held a master class and had to dominate the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. The defense held the Dolphins to just 56 yards rushing on 17 carries and applied the perfect amount of pressure on Tua Tagovailoa to make him really look like the rookie that he really is. They sacked him 6 times before he was actually yanked from the game, which secretly, I just love to see. Also, the secondary, I have to give a hat tip to those guys because a few of those 6 sacks were coverage sacks because Tua had nowhere to throw the ball. Offensively, this group executed a really impressive and creative game plan that Coach Fangio and Pat Shurmur put together. I also loved how they brought back the Lombardi sweep to get the run game going. That was some vintage football right there, and it worked really, really well because we finally got to see the Thunder and Lightning with Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon. They combined for 166 yards, 31 carries split between those two guys. Drew Lock only threw the ball, Sydney, 30 times. That is what we like to call balance, baby, and it was BEA beautiful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Alexis. And you said it. I think the big key for Locke on Sunday was the balance this offense had. You said it. He threw the ball 30 times. The Broncos ran 33 times. Even Coach Fangio said on Monday, following the win, that running the ball well is a young quarterback's best friend. And we certainly saw that. It allowed Drew to be more composed, more calm when it came time to throw the ball because he didn't feel the pressure to force the ball down the field. So my next question to you, Alexis, is what did you think overall of Drew Lock's performance against the Dolphins?
Well, I love the way he bounced back from the rough start that he had. I mean, he threw 4 picks the week before. He went out very first drive, threw an interception. The next drive, 3 and out. That's not a good start for Drew Lock. So the fact that he was able to come back out, show some poise, show some grit, which is really great to see from a guy with his level of experience, because he very easily could have been, oh man, here we go again. It's just going to be another rough outing for me, but he didn't. And I think that was really important for Drew Lock to show that. He managed the game. He made big 3rd down throws. And he even impressed us with his legs. You mentioned 2 of those carries that the Broncos had out of the 33 on Sunday. 2 of those were from Drew Lock. I think he picked up 14 yards on that one 3rd and 13 play, I think it was. So a really big game from him, a solid showing, and one that Drew can really build off of.
All right, Alexa, it's time to give out some of our well-deserved snaps this week, and there's a good amount of guys to choose from, especially on the defensive side of the ball too. So who are you going to give your snaps to?
Okay, this one's tough this week because there were so many guys deserving of snaps, but I think I'm actually going to go with the most obvious one. I know, I'm kind of lame. I'm going to go Justin Simmons because he made the play of the game, because that was about to be Fitzpatrick to Parker 4-6, and you and I might be having a very different conversation on this podcast this week. So Justin Simmons, the Iron Man, coming up with a big play to seal the deal for the Broncos. My snaps go to you.
Great choice, Alexis. I actually got to talk to Justin Simmons after the game on Sunday, and it was kind of funny because Coach Fangio said that it was poetic justice for Justin to finally get that interception at the end of the game, because his first one was called back, and even Justin said throughout the game, he was like, I got to get that interception back. I'm going to get one, and it was a game-saving one.
Yeah, and I have to point out that holding call on A.J. Boye on Justin Simmons' first interception, questionable at best. But okay, your snaps. Who are yours going to this week?
You know what, Alexis? I'm going to give the defense some more love here too. My snaps this week are going to Malik read because he is having such a good season. On Sunday, he recorded 1.5 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, and 2 tackles for loss. Plus, Malik currently leads all undrafted players with 6.5 sacks through week 11. So snaps to you, Malik. Keep on killing it. All right, I think it's safe to say that Alexis and I are excited about the win, but it is Wednesday and the players are back out on the practice field today preparing to face the best team in the NFC South, which brings us to our long snap segment of the show. The New Orleans Saints will make the trip to the Mile High City this Sunday, and here to help us get up to speed on the Saints is team reporter Caroline Gonzalez. Caroline, thanks so much for joining us today.
Of course, ladies, happy to be on. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, first and foremost, Caroline, I know it has been a crazy couple of weeks for you all. Drew Brees placed on IR due to 11 broken ribs, and then the uncertainty as to who would start in his place last week. Truly, I don't think Sean Payton could have avoided the quarterback conversation any more than he did last week. So were you surprised that Taysom Hill was named the starter over Jameis Winston?
Listen, ladies, I think I had the exact same reaction as everyone else did because, I could take the low road and say, oh, I knew it was going to be Taysom all along. But no, on all of my video segments, there is proof that I was like, oh, no, I think it's going to be Jameis because I did think it was going to be Jameis Winston because he has a history of being a starting quarterback for a few years for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so I thought that was going to be the starting quarterback. And so when he said Taysom Hill, I was just as shocked as the next person. I found out when the fans found out. But obviously, Sean Payton knows a lot more than I do about football, just a little bit. And so he clearly made the right decision.
I swear he spent more time last week talking about the bagel that he was eating on the phone than talking about his
Y'all know how it is as reporters, working for a team. You're like, you want to get this information, but you can only work with what you got. And that I wanted a bagel by the end of the week more than I wanted, to know what the Saints were doing at quarterback.
I love it. Well, let's talk a little bit about Taysom Hill. He got his very first start in the NFL at the age of 30 last week and won. What did you like about what you saw from him Sunday against the Falcons? And really, how does he change this offense with him under center?
Honestly, I thought it was just confidence. I thought that was the biggest thing that Taysom Hill brought to this team is confidence. You saw his skill get better each and every quarter, and he just developed with time as the game went on. But more than anything, it was confidence right off the bat. Like you could see him in pregame, he was smiling, he was having fun as usual with his teammates. As soon as he went into that huddle, you could tell that he commanded the huddle from the very start. And so I think he just brought a sense of calm, a sense of ease to this team. And these guys have been playing with Taysom for several years now. And so it's not like, Jameis Winston is relatively new, and Taysom has been behind Drew Brees for several years now, and not only in the quarterback room, but he's been, bouncing around several other position rooms. So I thought he just brought a sense of calm and confidence over this team that was clearly displayed on the field.
Yeah, he also brought his running ability too. He was the Saints' leading rusher on Sunday with, I think, just over 50 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. And on top of him, you guys have Alvin Kamara, who's such a dynamic and versatile back. I think I read somewhere this week that Alvin Kamara was the first player in NFL history to have at least 500 rushing and receiving yards in each of his first 4 seasons, which is awesome. So my question to you, Caroline, is do you think that Hill running the ball more will take some of that pressure off of Kamara?
I do. I think not only will I don't think it necessarily takes pressure off of Kamara. I think it kind of just opens up a new weapon for this offense. I think all year the Saints have had to deal with several injuries throughout the entire season. At first it was Michael Thomas, and then Emmanuel Sanders got placed on the COVID-19 list. And then, some defensive linemen were out, some members of the secondary were out. So it seems like time and time again, this team has had to just patch it up game after game, week after week. They've had to patch things up. And now that's kind of created this sense of adversity and perseverance for the Saints team. And so not only does Taysom Hill at quarterback, kind of alleviate the pressure off of Kamara, but it just gives them a new weapon, right? Like you've seen what Alvin Kamara can do, and you've seen his ability. So now not only does the opposing team defense have to worry about Alvin Kamara, now you have to worry about Taysom Hill as well. So alleviate a little bit, but I think it just gives Sean Payton a new weapon to use.
Yeah, speaking of other weapons the Saints have, you guys have a receiver that Broncos country knows very, very well in Emmanuel Sanders. And I have a feeling he's going to make his presence very known on Sunday as he returns to Empower Field at Mile High. I have to ask, Caroline, what's your take on Sanders? What type of addition has he been to the team this year?
Well, I go back to, what I said about Taysom Hill and being another addition. When Emmanuel Sanders came to this team, you knew that, he wasn't going to take Michael Thomas's place because you already had an established wide receiver in Michael Thomas. So it was really just adding someone who was going to be another weapon, another, piece of the offense for Sean Payton to use. And so Emmanuel Sanders has been exactly that. I talked about him going on the COVID-19 list and other players having to step up. We had an undrafted rookie, Marquez Callaway, step up for the Saints team, but Emmanuel Sanders has just he's fit into this puzzle exactly how Sean Payton wanted him to fit in and be that wide receiver too, and just be another piece of this offense that Drew, Taysom, Jameis, whoever can use on this team. So he's been great. I have a question for y'all though, because I haven't really been able to get to know Emmanuel Sanders other than through these Zoom calls. So what is he like to y'all?
I will say, so I've known Emmanuel for a while. I used to work for the Denver Post, and he actually in the studio one time. We did a little, 20-minute just roundtable hangout session. He is confident. He is smart. He is, he's a fiery personality. Like when you walk into the locker room, like Emmanuel Sanders makes his presence known. Yeah. And so I think it's interesting to see how that kind of translates from the locker room onto the field, because he's pretty much the exact same guy in the locker room as well. He's a really, really good guy, great family man, just an outstanding personality. He's somebody who is great in the community. I think he's going to be great for you guys in New Orleans.
Yeah, from everything I've seen over the Zoom calls, as much as you can get to know someone over Zoom calls, he seemed like that guy. He's always talking up his teammates. He's always talking well about other people. And he carries himself with a certain, aura and confidence, like you said, that just is infectious to everyone on the team.
Speaking of wide receivers, you mentioned Michael Thomas. Former Offensive Player of the Year. You guys have so many weapons. It is unbelievable. So what have you seen from kind of Michael Thomas this year, this season? And how hard is it going to be for this Broncos secondary to match up against him?
Well, let me tell you what, Michael Thomas takes every rep as it's a game rep. Sean Payton, and I know that's a cliche, but Sean Payton actually has a funny story where he lined up as against Michael Thomas in practice once and was just kind of going through the motions, and Michael Thomas went against him, and Sean Payton was like, I was out. I felt like I just got hit by a truck. I was injured for like a few days. So Michael Thomas really does take every rep as it's a game rep, and he hasn't necessarily got into his rhythm until last game with Taysom Hill, which was kind of interesting because he's been dealing with this high ankle sprain and then hamstring injury. And then, he was sidelined due to disciplinary issues. So he hasn't really found that flow that I think we're used to seeing out of Michael Thomas until that game last week, oddly enough, with Taysom Hill at quarterback. And I think, Michael Thomas having, that rapport and that chemistry with Taysom Hill over the last few years in practice and things like that has helped him a lot. And I think, honestly, this Broncos secondary is going to struggle against a player like Michael Thomas, who hasn't really taken a big bite out of the apple yet this year. And I think we're going to see that here soon.
I think with all the weapons on offense for you guys, your defense gets overlooked a little bit, which is totally not fair given the fact that they are one of the best defenses in the league this season. So what are the biggest strengths that you've seen from the Saints defense this season? And maybe what are some of the weaknesses that the Broncos can expose?
That you guys can feast on. I love it. It's Thanksgiving, so we got to talk about feasting.
Yes, feasting, winning recipes, home cooking.
I'm so excited. So I think the Saints defense, it's funny because during training camp, and we were still doing all this virtual stuff, I wasn't allowed to go to training camp, but our senior reporter was, and he went, and all we were talking about on our shows was this Saints defense and how great they looked, and they were coming out firing. We were so excited. And then the few games into the season, they weren't necessarily performing up to the standard that we had seen in training camp, and we were all kind of confused, like what's going on. And it came down to communication. It came down to simplifying the terminology. And now that you've seen that out of this Saints defense, defense, like you said, they're peaking at the right time, and they have the number one rushing defense right now. And I think some of the strengths for the Saints defense is really just that front four. You have Cam Jordan, who's, been an elite defender in this league for a long time. Trey Hendrickson's really finding his peak at the right time. He has 9.5 sacks, tied for lead league in the NFL right now. And different guys have just stepped up at the right time. They lost Sheldon Rankins, a defensive tackle, to an injury this year, and different guys on this line have stepped up, like David Onyemata. I think where they need to continue to work on this defense is in the secondary. I think we saw last week, Janoris Jackrabbit Jenkins, he stepped up when Marshawn Lattimore was out, their corner. We're not sure if Marshawn Lattimore is going to play this game due to injury, but we'll have to see. But I think those communication issues that they solved are going to help the secondary in the long run, but I think it's still something that the Saints team wants to work on.
These two teams don't play each other very often. The Saints only come to the Mile High City, I think, every 8 years. So, Caroline, is there any concern surrounding the team about playing at such a high elevation since they don't do it very often?
Well, we haven't had media availability yet this week. It's certainly a question that I'm sure is going to be asked. And I know in past interviews, it has been a talking point. From personal experience, I played in a conference tournament basketball game in Montana. And when I tell you I couldn't breathe running up and down the court, I was like, what is happening to me? My feet were in quicksand. I mean, I'm not the best, most laterally gifted person in the world, but I was struggling with that altitude. And so I think it's certainly going to be a talking point this week, but I have no doubt that Sean Payton is going to do whatever he can to get that competitive edge. I don't know if he's going to try to do something crazy in the indoor or what, but I think they'll be prepared.
I moved here in April, so I've been here for about half a year now, and I still get really out of breath just walking up the stairs. So good luck to them.
I moved here in 2005 and I'm still winded just walking around my
apartment. Okay, fair.
Maybe we're just all out of shape. Maybe that's
that could be it too.
It's COVID. Like, the gyms are closed. What do you want us to do?
Exactly. We'll blame it on this year. But Caroline, now that we're all up to speed on the Saints matchup, thank you for that. Let's switch gears. As all of you know, one of our main goals here on the Snap is to highlight women's impact in and around the NFL. So Caroline, let's dive a little more into your career. Just to start, can you tell us about your role with the Saints and what your responsibilities are on a daily basis?
Yeah, absolutely. Strap in, because get ready. No, I'm just kidding. So my title, I guess, with the Saints is broadcasting coordinator. And one of the things that makes working for the Saints so unique is not only do you work for the Saints as an NFL team, you also work for the Pelicans, which is an NBA team, because we are under the same owner in Mrs. Gail Benson. Former owner was Tom Benson. That is his late wife. And so that's one of the great perks, because my background is in basketball. And so being able to work for both teams, I am right now the host of our pregame and postgame show on our website. I host our podcast 3 times a week, like you lovely ladies. And I do a lot of our production for our Pelicans radio side. And I also do our Pelicans radio sideline duties for the Pelicans as well. So, with hosting, emceeing events for sponsorship, things like that, I do a little bit of everything, but, broadcasting coordinator, I guess, is the title.
We all know landing a job in the NFL is not easy at all. So kind of walk us through what your path was like to get here in the NFL and the NBA in your case. How did you really get your start in broadcasting?
Well, I'm actually very fortunate, and this is my first job. I don't know if y'all knew that. So I graduated I'm originally from Dallas, and I came to play basketball in New Orleans at Loyola University, New Orleans, on scholarship. And so once I finished up playing basketball, I wasn't really sure what, everyone talks about having a dream job, and I wasn't really sure what my dream job was, but I knew it was something in sports and something talking about sports, because who wouldn't want to talk about sports? And so around my senior year is when I kind of realized I wanted to be a sports reporter. And in my senior class, I actually had an assignment to talk to someone who could potentially hire me. And it wasn't like, hey, go get an interview. It was just see, if you can talk to someone who can look at your portfolio, give you some feedback and things like that. And so I was connected through one of my professors with the executive director of digital media for the Saints and Pelicans, Doug Tatum. And so we just got a cup of coffee, and he looked at my portfolio, and it wasn't until maybe like 2 months ago that he was like, yeah, your portfolio was awful, but meeting you and knowing your personality and things like that, that's what sold me, but your video content was terrible. And so I thought that was pretty funny. But when I got hired for the Saints and Pelicans, I was hired as a digital media coordinator, and so I was helping with the website and things like that, doing kind of the behind the scenes stuff. And then an opportunity opened up, and I kind of just let my intentions be known within the organization that this is what I wanted to do. Whenever the reporters were doing anything or recording a podcast, I would just go sit in the room with them and take notes and try to learn and soak up as much information as I could. And so when an exit happened from the organization, an opportunity opened up, and that's kind of when I slid in, and it's kind of been onward and upward since then. And I'm very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in.
It seems like smooth sailing, but have you faced any big challenges along the way?
Oh, absolutely. I think, this is a podcast where I'm going to be completely raw and honest. I think confidence is something that I've struggled with a lot. I'm a former athlete. I was raised by my brothers and my dad. I mean, my mom was around, but she traveled a lot. And so I was always like the tomboy, athlete, wore my hair up every day. And so transitioning from that to, y'all know how it is, just having to be like this girly girl and, worry about hair and makeup and nails and all these things. And then, talking about sports is the thing that kind of has come easy. But all that other stuff, I've definitely had to kind of bet on myself a little bit more and gain that confidence. And it's through other women who I've talked to and have said like, hey, we deal with the same thing. It's no big deal. Like, you just kind of face it and get over it. I think that's something that has been a huge impact on me. So confidence. And then I think football is something that I'm continuing to learn about. I've always, loved football and loved watching it, enjoyed watching it, but my background is in basketball. So kind of transitioning to talk about both has been something that's been, I don't want to say challenging to juggle, but interesting to juggle.
Out of everything that you've covered, Caroline, whether it's with the Saints, the Pelicans, what has been your favorite event or game that you've covered so far, and why?
Let's see. I think my favorite event and game, man, that's hard. I think my favorite was probably when the Pelicans faced the Portland Trailblazers in playoffs. I've had a lot of great Saints memories too. My favorite would have been the NFC South Championship or NFC Championship game, but we're not going to talk about that. But I think the Pelicans, when they went to playoffs against the Portland Trailblazers, they swept the Trailblazers in 4 games, and that was just so fun because that was my first year working for the organization. I wasn't a reporter yet, so I wasn't, worrying about what I was going to say and do. I just got to sit back and kind of enjoy. And I was standing next to a guy, a Pelicans fan at the time, when the final buzzer sounded, and he like gave me a chest bump, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, I have no idea who you are, but this is what we're doing. So just seeing like the love that this city has for these professional teams has been really cool to see.
You mentioned earlier that you didn't really have a dream job in mind. So my next question for you is, what's next for you? Do you have a goal after this that you're kind of working towards?
Well, what's next is to get some curtains so that I can no longer have this light in my face. No, what's next? Man, I really don't know. I think there's a lot of opportunities that I'd like to explore now that I kind of have my foot in the door. I was actually a little fun Thanksgiving story. I'm not able to go home because of obviously COVID-19. And so my mom was super disappointed. I'm very close with my family. And so we decided to cook over Zoom together. And so last night we had our little rehearsal cooking a few dishes. And so, she has her laptop set up at the front of her kitchen and I have my laptop. And so we were kind of recording over Zoom, and I was like, we should do this more often. Like, we should, make this a thing. And then, that kind of sparked like a business idea. And so just like finding new things, not only in my life, but in my profession that I'm passionate about. And not that I'm not passionate about sports, but just finding these little passion projects and little pockets. I think what's next, I'd love to, sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place. I love to be a color commentator for NBA games, whether that's on radio or on TV. I was able to do it for one game this year as the Pelicans took on the Portland Trailblazers. That was my first time traveling, first time being a color commentator. It was the most fun, and I don't want to say easiest, but it was the smoothest thing I've ever done. And it was just so fun. So I think hopefully that's in my future.
Well, Caroline, there's no doubt your future looks bright, but throughout all of your experiences in the sports industry, what advice would you give women looking to get into this industry or really any industry?
Yeah, bet on yourself. Like, have that confidence and have that persistence that, I can do this. Like, I got it. I can do hard things. That's something that I kind of continue to tell myself, like, I can do hard things. I am enough and I have enough time. I often find myself feeling like I'm running out of time, which is kind of funny because I'm just starting out in this industry. And that's kind of the environment that we're in right now with social media and with the world we're in. Like, we feel like we have to have all these things and all these accomplishments right here, right now, but it's really just about the journey that we have to enjoy and finding the journey of, my first year, I wasn't allowed to ask a question of Sean Payton because that wasn't my place. And now I'm like the team reporter, just like loving that journey and sitting back and realizing everything that you have overcome is really special, but just falling in love with the process and betting on yourself and betting on your hard work and your ability. Because if you know that you have that in you, like just keep chasing it, because that's really the only thing that you can do as long as you continue to work hard, bet on yourself, have that confidence, and just walk in the room like you own it.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, no, that's great advice, Caroline. And I know I can speak on behalf of Alexis and I when I say that it was such a pleasure to have you on the Snap today. Thanks so much for joining us to talk about the Broncos Saints matchup and your career as well.
Thanks for having me, ladies. It was a pleasure.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's edition of The Snap. We hope you all will meet us right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and on YouTube next week for another fun episode.